So good morning and welcome to the next step in the saga of Beaumont Place. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the start of construction of this exciting new addition to the village of Whitefish Bay. I'm Dick Lincoln from the Mandel Group, and I'm going to be your den mother for the next half hour or so. This $28 million development that we start today is certainly one of the largest in the history of the Bay. It's a unique undertaking for this community in any number of ways. Beaumont Place's 83 luxury apartment homes will provide opportunities for longtime North Shore residents to remain in the community close to family and friends, familiar shopping, and to their religious community. Beaumont Place is truly a successful public-private partnership thanks to the vision and leadership of the Village Board and the Community Development Authority. Beaumont Place will replace the existing parking that's just to our east here with virtually the same number of public spaces, but in an attractive, covered, and permanent structure, a significant long-term improvement for the shoppers and employees who use the parking, as well as for the businesses along Silver Spring that they patronize. Beaumont Place's 83 new homes will bring new residents to patronize and support the Silver Spring Business District, while at the same time, as Bay residents sell their homes to move to Beaumont Place, it will provide opportunities for new families to move to the Bay and support our community and our great schools. More on this point in a minute. You may have noticed that I keep saying we and our, almost like I belong here. Well, in fact, I do. As many of you know, my family and I have lived in the same house on Lexington Boulevard for almost 27 years. And well before that, my wife graduated from Whitefish Bay High School. I won't embarrass her by telling you what year. Our kids benefit every day from a Whitefish Bay public school education. My daughter started kindergarten at Richard's School just a couple blocks up the street as a 5-year-old in 1986. To illustrate the point I just made, she and her family have just purchased a house a few blocks from here on Bay Ridge, and my 5-year-old grandson will be following in his mother's steps to Richards this fall, the third generation to attend that school. In my business, it's always a great day when we break ground on a new development, but you can see how this event today is particularly gratifying to me personally. I spoke earlier of this development as a public-private partnership between the Mandel Group and the village. A key part of that partnership required the creation of a tax incremental financing district to provide the funds to construct the public parking. That in turn brings the Community Development Authority into the process. Without that TIF assistance, this development could not have moved forward. Ray Krieger has been the CDA chairman since that authority was created in 2002. In real life, Ray is an attorney with Michael Best and Friedrich, but his leadership of the CDA for the past decade is what I want to acknowledge today. Ray, say a few words.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dick. The story of the Beaumont project is in many ways similar to the story of Dick Lincoln and his family and many of you. We started all of this back about the year 2000 when the Community Development Authority was created. We had a project in mind called a master plan, which had never been done for the village. And so we created a master plan. We also went about the business of creating design guidelines for the street. And as you know, we redesigned the street, all with the help of the village board and some great leadership by past presidents and our current president, Julie Siegel. I've always thought of Whitefish Bay as a fully developed urban village, the last urban neighborhood on the north side of the metropolitan area. And I say that, and I define it in terms of small lots, small residential lots, city sidewalks, street lights, and a main street. And I think over the years, over the last decade, the village has been successful in encouraging new businesses on the street. You all know them, you all visit them, and will continue to do so. There'll be some more businesses new businesses on the street in the future that are already in the planning stages. But I want to go back to the CDA and the members that we've had over time There have been some, I see Jim Romer, raise your hand, Jim, who's been on the village board and a member of the CDA for many, many years. He's recently stepped off. Dan Cohen, one of our alumni. Dan's over here. Current members, Mike Dwyer, Ted Balistrade. You two guys stand up. And Brian Ackerman, you're here too. Raise your hand. Some of you, the three of you stand up. They're current members of the board. And none of this had happened without a quorum. We have Matt Hunter and we have others. I don't know if they're here this morning, but I thank all members of the CDA and of course the village board. This is a wonderful project that fulfills a dream that we've always had. If you look at the land use of the village, and as I say, a fully developed village as we have, there aren't many places where you can think about additional projects. We've had some fill-in projects up and down the street, from the condominium project at Silver Spring Lake down to the project at the corner of Lydell and Silver Spring, and many projects in between. But this project here has always been the one that we've dreamed about. And this is the one that we thought if we could get the right developer with the right vision to fulfill needs here of Whitefish Bay, of people that want to stay in the neighborhood, but no longer want to have the big house, we might be able to put something together. It took us well over 10 years in our search to find that right combination of developer and vision. And of course, we had wonderful support from Julie Siegel and the village board, current and past. And so we think this is, in many ways, a crowning jewel. It'll be good not only for residents, it'll be great for the retail area on Silver Spring. It'll add a lot of energy to Silver Spring, and I think will add value to all of our lives, both in terms of our friends staying here in our neighborhoods, as well as the contribution to the tax base, which will be considerable. The actual contribution to the tax base will be in the neighborhood of $14 to $15 million annually, and the project cost, as has been mentioned, is $28 to $29 million. It's a very significant project for this village in its history. It's one that we expect that when we're all here 25 years from now and celebrating the 25th anniversary, it will be as beautiful then as it is now, and it will be as remarkable then as it will be at this point in time. And it's because of who's building it, how it's going to be built, and all of the quality that's being put into this in terms of materials. It's what you'd expect in Whitefish Bay, and I think it's very much what we're going to get. So again, thank you to all members of the CDA. Thank you to Julie and the members of the village board, Barry Mandel and his staff, Dick Lincoln, Bob Monnet, who we came to know very well over the last few years. And thank all of you for coming this morning.
Thanks, Ray, and thanks again to the CDA. I don't know if we're violating the open meeting laws by having everybody in the room here, but as you know, an undertaking of this size and complexity requires a talented and dedicated team for both parties. And certainly the village's team and staff and consultants fits that bill. I want to thank, first of all, village manager Pat Grave, as well as his assistant Kayla Chadwick for sitting through all the same presentations so many times. You could give them yourself. Also to village engineer Dan Nays, as well as our new best friends in the building inspection department, Paul Launer and Joel Ostrike. Captain Stefanski and Chief Young. Thanks as well to the members of the Plan Commission and to Roy Wagner and the members of the Architectural Review Committee. John Mann, I know, is here from Man Edge, and Chief Whitaker and Dave Lynn from the North Shore Fire Department. But a special thanks as well to Village Attorney Chris Jacobs and to Mike Harrigan, the village's financial advisor. Both Chris and Mike played crucial roles in completing this deal, and Chris and I were still tinkering with closing documents last night. There are two other people that I want to single out for their leadership and vision, and Ray mentioned one of them. Jim Romer has just finished a 6-year run on the village board, and before that he was one of the original members of the CDA, where he served from 2002 to 2011. Jim and I have actually been talking about a development like this for about 10 years. When we used to work together way back when, I even approached Bill Kriegel and his partners at Fitzgerald's. That never came to anything, but it was some of the early conversations with Jim and Julie Siegel in 2011 and 2012 that really started the ball rolling to where we are today. Jim, thank you for your vision and your persistence. The village board deserves special thanks. Their support has not wavered since we began this journey over a year ago. I mentioned Julie Siegel, who has been village president since 2011, and in that time she's probably learned more about flooded basements, emerald ash borers, and insecticides than she ever imagined that she would. We're here this morning in large part because of Julie's leadership. Julie?
Few words that I had actually written down really already been said, and I just want to reiterate that this partnership, this public-private partnership with the Mandel Group is so exciting. I mean, the village can't be more excited to be working with the Mandel Group and everybody involved. And the Mandel Group, in our minds, is one of the finest residential developers in the area. And they've worked with the village to accommodate our requests in terms of design build and in terms of how the project is managed. This project would not have come together, without the hard work of our staff, the CDA, the Art Plan Commission, and this truly was a group effort. It was supported and nurtured by so many. I guess the thing that Ray talked about is the village objectives for this site and the master plan and how this project really fits in perfectly within that master plan. And there really was one element missing, which was the residential density in this area in terms of housing for empty nesters, with smaller, more manageable space, but still maintaining those ties to the village. In fact, I have a friend whose mom sold her house about 6 years ago, moved out to a condo in Mequon, and they can't wait to move her back into one of the apartments as soon as they're completed, closer to my friend and her brother who both live here. So really this project is a win-win for everybody. I'm looking forward to the project coming together and know that when this is finished, this will be a real asset for Whitefish Bay. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks to you and the village board again for your leadership and vision on this. Now I want to turn to Dr. Mark Epley. Since 2002, Mark has been a professor of finance and the Bell Chair in Real Estate at Marquette University. And last summer, he was named interim dean of business administration at Marquette. Mark is a widely respected economist, and respected economist is not an oxymoron. He's written widely on real estate economics and sound reduction. But more importantly, Mark has had absolutely nothing to do with the development of Beaumont Place. But he has lived here in the Bay with his family for the past 11 years. So I've asked him to share his unique insights, both as a noticed economist and most importantly as a neighbor.
Thanks, Dick. Delighted to be here. Mary, Ray, Julie, Dick, congratulations on the development here. Dick, if the bells do start ringing, that's something we celebrate at Marquette. It's not a problem. And Ray, I'm beginning to question the CDA and the village a little bit in that you worked with Bob Mott for so long and you still went ahead with this deal. It's good, Bob. I do have a few comments about urban development, smart growth, and so forth. This area of economics that I've studied for a while. And as Dick noted, my family and I have lived here for the last 11 years. There's 4 of us, and my Aunt Helen as well, who's here presently. But the question we wanted to ask when you start out is what makes Whitefish Bay a great place to live? And you all know the answer to this. It's the school systems. And when you look at it from an economics point of view, good schools actually give your house value additional value. You go, we've got a great housing stock, and that helps housing values. And walkability. Walkability is a newer one, but the ability to walk to a set of amenities that you want to have in your life has become more and more important. So it's less about the amenities at your house than the amenities in close proximity to your house. So those are the 3 things. There's one additional one that creates a fair bit of housing value, and that's living close to Dick Lincoln. Dick was one of the first residents here back in 1920. The population was 882 people, so that's really kind of interesting. Less than a century ago, we had less than 1,000 people in Whitefish Bay, but by 1930, we had 5,300 people living in Whitefish Bay. That's a 20% compound growth rate year after year during that decade. Grew to about 8,700 residents in 1938. And by 1950, we had more population here in Whitefish Bay than we do today, at 14,600 folks. And the population peaked here in the 1960s at about 18,000 people. So we've seen a slight decline of people across time. So what really allowed Whitefish Bay to grow was transportation. We had 2 transportation lines, the first one being the Milwaukee and Whitefish Bay Railroad, and then later the Milwaukee Electric Railway, which was part of We Energies, or what became part of We Energies. We now have the automobile. But what made Whitefish Bay a destination? It was really the Pabst Resort that was built in 1888, a year after we had transportation up here. The Pabst Resort was housed over where Palisades is at the end of Henry Clay. And in their heyday, 1888 till 1914, they had as many as 10,000 people come up here a day. When you look at that, that's about 5% of the then 200,000 population. That's the equivalent of what we would see down at Summerfest based on today's population of Milwaukee. So it's amazing. So let's get to how we were designed and how we look like we do here in Whitefish Bay. And there's some things that are really important. The first thing that's important, we were really designed back in about 1893, and the street grid was largely laid out at that point. The reason why that was important, it came before the mass production of the automobile. The mass production of the automobile with Henry Ford started about in 1913, and after that, more and more urban designs were designed around not walkability, but around the vehicle. And as you start to look at that, it became more and more that way across time. And roads limit pedestrian interactions to the point where you go to the freeway system that was part of the 1956 Interstate Freeway Act, really starts to separate neighborhoods. An interesting thing about the Interstate Freeway Act of 1956, you know what it was about? It was not about proximity and getting out to the suburbs. It was a Department of Defense Act to allow us to move our munitions across the country, which I think is kind of interesting, because we recognized we couldn't move them through Main Street. They were too tight. They were walkable. From there, the other big thing that happened between 1893 and the 1920s was the first zoning code came around in New York City. That was in 1960. And it was really reinforced with the decision in 1926 called Euclid. And what Euclid really allowed us to do is it actually required the separation of uses. And at the time, some of that was necessary. Euclid was about separating a cement manufacturing facility from a neighborhood. That facility was there for 15, 18 years before the neighborhood started growing around it, but they became a non-conforming use. And that's kind of the idea behind zoning. You don't want to have non-conforming uses around you. But at one point, we really want to celebrate non-conforming uses as well. And that's what smart growth is about. It's about having a set of desirable amenities in close proximity to where you are. If not, what do you have? You have rows and rows of single-family homes or apartments that are largely non-distinct. So today we live our lives, most people live their lives in vehicular-focused zoning plans. For instance, even the state of Minnesota, right next to us, requires at least 60 acres to build a high school. 60 acres would equal about 37 blocks here in Whitefish Bay. Think about what that would do to our community. And once you have these big areas for schools, you have to drive there because there's no ability to walk. It's too far away. So what happens? We walk to work, we walk to school, we walk to the bread store, we walk to soccer, we walk to lacrosse. But what happened here in Whitefish Bay is they wanted to make sure we maintained our urban fabric, where density is not necessarily a four-letter word, and they passed in 2009 the smart growth strategy. So what's smart growth? In the book that I wrote with Charles too on this topic, smart growth is a development strategy that attempts to serve the needs for future growth while minimizing its impact on the environment. So that's a quick definition. Then there are a handful of principles. I'm going to quickly speak to each of those principles and talk about this development or Whitefish Bay. The first principle is a mix of uses. So different from separating uses and having school here, retail here, work here, and your home over here, we want to integrate. We want to have a mix of uses. We want to have a compact building design. That's what's being proposed here. A range of housing opportunities. We don't have a lot of that here in Whitefish Bay. This development will enhance that. We want to have walkable neighborhoods. Walkable meaning walkable to a set of amenities within a quarter mile of where you are. Strong sense of place. That's what's kind of cool here about Whitefish Bay. We have a main street. We have a sense of place here. Preserve open spaces. We've got wonderful open spaces here in Whitefish Bay among some other attributes. So that gives you a sense of what smart growth is. It's about embracing differences in product types as well as different types of housing in your own community. So when we look at smart growth, we really want to encourage what's called walkability. And how walkability is measured by economists is a metric called Walk Score. And this is kind of a Google-based algorithm that measures a community's desirability looking at 14 different attributes of walkability. The first one, grocery store. We can walk to a grocery store. I do it every weekend with my baby jogger without a baby in it, because that's when I bring the groceries back home. I've gotten some weird looks, but that's okay. Restaurants. We've increased the number of restaurants we've had here with the Bay, but we have Brugger's, coffee shops. We have Stone Creek and City Market. Quality open space with Clody, Big Bay, and Cahill. We have recreation opportunities. We bike right up and there's groups of us biking right up and down the Lake Drive. Schools. Our kids went to them. I mean, I don't have to say. Public amenities such as the library, we have some of that. So in places of worship. These are the set of amenities we want to have within a quarter mile of where we live because we're willing to walk a quarter mile. We've got this great smart growth community where we can really get around without having to be in a car, without having a car-oriented design. If you look at this and you compare it to what you see with some of the post, let's say, World War II developments, what really happened then? People moved from the city. And the reason why they moved from the city, there was crime, there's social unrest, especially in the 60s, and there's pollution. And so they moved out to these wonderful places out in the suburbs that had huge lots and huge houses. But they became islands unto themselves. Make it really difficult even to get to a neighbor. And you go, that's not necessarily how people want to live their lives today. Today what we want to have is a nice house, but in the real value doesn't come in the house, in the lot, it comes in with the connection to a set of amenities that we have in our neighborhoods called smart growth. Now, one of the things we talked about, one of the smart growth tenets right at the very top, was a diversity of housing types. In Whitefish Bay, we really don't have that attribute. 88% of the housing in Whitefish Bay, single family, 12% apartments. And you go, some of you might ask, well, and by the way, nationally, to put it on a comparison, 65% is owner-occupied and 35% is renter-occupied. So, but why is the diversity of housing types good? Do we really want renters in our neighborhood? And yeah, we do want renters in our neighborhood for a variety of reasons. And one good example where it shows how we might want renters in our neighborhood is Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, the prices of both renting and owning are so high that if you're a teacher, if you're a fireman, you might see one among our midst, or you might not be able to afford to live in the community with which you're serving. That's not community. If you're driving a half hour to an hour to get to the place where you're going to teach the kids, you're worn out by the time you get there, and guess what? Down the street, you don't have the fireman who a block away from us. We have a fireman, and we have one of my daughter's teachers living. That's community to me. When we Additionally, it's important from, as Dick and others have mentioned here, from an empty nester perspective. We have housing alternatives when we graduate from our maintenance-intense 1920s vintage homes. So with that said, one of the tenets of smart growth is to have a diversity of housing opportunities available as we move through our life cycle as individuals, and as we have different types of people needed in our community to provide services. We need to be a community for all. And what we're really looking at here with this 83-unit proposed development by Barry and his team is a mix of housing that'll support the butcher, the baker, the teacher, the empty nester, the investment banker, to all be able to live here in Whitefish Bay. And that, my friends, creates community. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I told you he was good. Well, we slipped past 9 o'clock and the bells haven't rung yet. I don't know if that's a good sign or not. But before I turn to Barry Mandel to conclude the program, I've got one last kind of housekeeping item. I mentioned earlier that an undertaking of this size requires a talented and dedicated team from both parties. And I talked about the village folks who contributed, but now I want to shine the spotlight briefly on our team as well. Jim Shields and Lissa Olker led the design team from Hamill Green and Abramson, along with Dick Pierce and Kurt Fry from Pierce Engineers and Aaron Cook from Dar Engineering. Pat Harrison from GZA Geo Environmental, Eric Bonner from Terra Engineering, and Tim Garland from the Garland Alliance rounded out the design team. VJS Construction Services will be our general contractor, led by Dave Jorgensen, and at the site, Jason Schneider. This is a complex and tight urban site, and as you've been able to hear in the last few minutes, also a busy one, requiring a concerted and continuous effort to maintain access and public parking during the construction process. We're working with the village and the Business Improvement District to make that process as painless as possible, and it'll be VJS's responsibility to implement the plan. So when there is a hiccup, as there inevitably will be, please don't show up on my front lawn with torches and pitchforks. Call Jason. Next, we couldn't get here, of course, without lawyers and bankers. So special thanks to Foley and Lardner, especially to Sarah Jelensic and Nick Hatch, and to BMO Harris Bank, led by Doug Brodzik, Austin Motz, Mark Henschel, and their attorney Charlie McMullen, and their construction consultant Craig Beecher. Finally, my personal thanks to my colleagues at the Mandel Group, especially to Dave Pavella, our CFO, as well as Sherry Myers-Thompson, Tracy Brito, Jody Lesser, and our newest addition, Andy Wiegman. For you NCIS fans, Andy is our probie. Last, but certainly not least, to Bob Monnet, our Chief Operating Officer and the rudder of our development team. I won't insult him like Mark did because I have to work with him all day. But as any of you know who've been involved in any part of this process, Bob is both our visioner and our taskmaster. With Beaumont Place, as with many other Mandel Group successes, his leadership has been crucial to that success. Now on to Barry Mandel, our final speaker. That was an applause line. Well, Barry isn't really going to speak to us. He's going to lead us in a toast. Since forming the Mandel Group a little over 20 years ago, Barry has been and is the emotional core of our company. Mandel Group's motto is excellence, integrity, and pride. Nobody thinks harder or works harder to live those attributes than Barry. Barry, take us out.
Well, I'm going to wait just a moment until we pass out all the drinks. Just 1 second. Because I like to speak in front of a crowd that has had a little libation. Face it, yeah, it's going to take a while. I don't want anybody's arms to get too sore holding it up. You know, today I get to do 3 of my favorite things. 1 is a groundbreaking. 2, sharing wine with friends. And 3, toasting success. For a developer, there's just nothing better than a groundbreaking. Sure, it's, you know, building a building, but it's much more than that for us. It's revitalizing and enhancing a community. It's weaving the fabric of the community and making it more vibrant. It's creating a sense of place, and in this case, it's Beaumont Place. And that takes leadership, and we've talked a lot about leadership today. Julie, decisive and thoughtful. That's a very, very powerful combination. And having done business with just about everybody in your family, I know they're all very, very proud of you, and certainly very one proud father today. Ray Krieger, I've witnessed your leadership on just so many levels throughout our entire region. And for those of you who don't know, Ray Krieger is the great nephew of Giorgio O'Keeffe. And we were one sculpture away from calling this Giorgio O'Keeffe Place. I ain't going to get that sculpture yet, aren't I, Brad? How long have I been trying?
Just so there's a space.
Just so there's a space and a place. And, you know, details do make the difference. Pat DeGrave, Chris Jacobs, Mike Harrigan, and your crew, thank you so much for working through this with all of us. Roy Wagner's not here. He's on the Architectural Review Commission. And he has a firm understanding of the built environment and a passion for construction done right. Now, if it's done wrong, he makes a really good living at what he does. For those of you who don't know, he's a litigator. And at times he represents those who've been in buildings that haven't been built exactly correctly. And Jim Romer, again, from me personally, thank you for whispering in our ear that this could be a great opportunity. And again, to Bob Monette and Dick Lincoln, 2 people with extraordinarily deep roots in this community, and no 2 better leaders anywhere in this region to initiate and to bring to fruition a development. Now, sharing wine has been a very old tradition, and it's one that I do as often as I can. As part of the tradition, there's usually a toast. And today I wish to toast to success. Certainly to the success of Beaumont Place and to all the Mandel associates who are working on it. To our lawyers, but more than lawyers for us, people who have been with us for over 20 years, and we will have, before we have finished our career, closed over $1 billion of transactions. To the other businesses in Whitefish Bay, who I hope, and I know will have great success through this development. To the residents that choose to stay in the Bay, to VJS and the men and women who will build this building, and to their safety. To the architects and engineers, and one more great building done by Jim Shields. To our lenders, BMO Harris and Dan Hampton, thank you for coming from Chicago today. We really appreciate it. And to our investors, both whom have placed a very special trust in us. To the jobs that are created, to the tax base in Whitefish Bay, and not too much tax base, but just enough tax base. And really, to the example of success.
this success, Beaumont Place, which should be a model for other municipalities in this region, which will make this region a much stronger place. And to all of you today, thank you.
Cheers.
I think, Dick, does that conclude?
Well, just about.
Just about, okay.
Pretty much a typical Wednesday morning at the Mandel Group. We're all drinking champagne, party. Thank you, Barry, and thanks to all of you for coming this morning to celebrate this great occasion. I hope you can join us outside while we throw a little dirt around for the cameras, and then back in here to enjoy some refreshments, all provided by our great neighbor Sendix, thanks to Ted Balistreri and his team. This isn't a public television fundraiser, but also please don't forget to take your Beaumont Place tote bag and carry it with pride. Thank you again all for coming.